Well, here we are, folks, back for another one of my live stream model builds. And this is episode 7 in my construction of this B-24D. Now, as always with these videos, they end up being a lot longer between videos than I would like. That's just, unfortunately, a downside to my work schedule and my general busyness in life. I work evenings, so when I get home later in the day, I'm afraid of scheduling one of these on a night I work, and then if I get stuck at work late, it starts to eat into my ability to do these. So I schedule them on my days off, which tends to be 2, 3, sometimes 4 weeks between videos. However, we're back. And I did get quite a bit of progress done, kind of prep work behind the scenes for this week. So before we go any farther, just as a recap for anybody who might be new to this build, this is the Revell of Germany B-24D Liberator, and I am building it as... Sorry, give me 1 second here. I am building it as a RAF Coastal Command aircraft, and I'm using quite a bit of aftermarket. I'm going to try to track down the decals here. So I'm using Aviology's 1/48 scale B-24 ASW sheet, as you can see here. And I'll be doing it up as this aircraft at the bottom, BZ792, squadron code XBG, which technically is an RAF aircraft, but it was flown by a Canadian crew. So some of the aftermarket that I am including in this kit are, so we've got the Belcher bits, radome and ley light, as well as his Mark 24 torpedoes. Well, they're technically called a mine. The Mark 24 mine, which was also a torpedo, and some sono buoys. And I don't have instructions for it, but I'm also including the Wild Sow resin rocket pods. So that's you get some aftermarket stuff here, the rear turret, the top turret, and a couple of other additions to be added to this kit. So that is the overall plan. The overall plan for this build. And I'll quickly here pull up the kit and I'll show you where the current status stands. So as I said, I did get quite a bit of prep work done off camera. I'll show you the big one I got done, the wings. The wings have a coat of primer. So I have the cowlings glued on, I've masked off the engines, and I've given it all prime. There's still a little bit of work to do, which we'll do on camera, filling in some of the seams, as well as a little bit around the cowling. I might do most of the cowling with Mr. Surfacer, to be honest, but the sides of the cowlings, especially over here, need a little bit of putty. So we'll do that a little later here on the stream. And then the other work I did was on the forward fuselage. So just give me 1 second. I want to get this set up. There we go. So I can see the chat in case any of you fine folks out there have decided to chat with me on the chat. I can read that. So anyways, this is the fuselage as it stands. Now, some of the stuff I've done from the last video, I completed gluing it together. I got a bunch of the seams sanded down. I cleaned up in the bomb bay, which was a big one that I needed to worry about. So if you haven't seen last week's video, the issue I had, a lot of there's massive seams where these bulkheads met, as well as in here because of the way I did the interior detailing. I've done some aftermarket work, some custom scratch built details here in the bomb bay, and the way I glued that together caused some seams to show along these edges. So I went ahead, cleaned all that up, sanded it down, and then repainted it silver. Now, it's not perfect. In the right light, you do see a number of scratches up in here. I'm not going to worry about it at all. Because of the nature of the kit and the way it sits, you'll really have to kind of lift it up to look in there. As well, once you get the weathering done, a lot of that will just completely disappear. So I'm not going to worry too much about that. plan of attack for today, I'm going to start with I've also glued the nose cone on. That was not there the last time. So I'm going to start by doing some masking on this nose. I'd like to mask at least the bottom 2 rows of windows. And I'm going to glue on the chin radome, so see that live. Then I'll do some puttying on the wings. And then we'll come back and we can either do some masking. We could do some work on the tail. I got to get it ready as well for primer. So there's a few little things we can start poking away at if time permits closer to the end. So first things first, let's start masking this nose. Now, I do not have any of the pre-cut masks. I haven't used those in a long, long time. All I really end up doing is using a pretty sharp blade. I haven't put a new one on here yet. I'm just going to do a quick run on the gritstone here just to sharpen up the tip of that knife. That's the most important part, is this up here where you're actually going to do the cutting. So I'm just going to give that a quick sharpen. And then what I end up using is just standard Tamiya tape. This Tamiya kabuki tape comes in 3 different sizes. You've got 10 mil, I believe it's 6 mil and 4 mil. Doesn't even say, oh, maybe it's on this side. Yeah, 18, 10, and 6. Those are the 3 sizes you can get this stuff in. You can also buy it in really wide rolls and cut it down yourself. Comes in real good use when you're doing this. So when you're going to mask, now if you do want to see a bit more detail on this, if you go into my playlists, you'll see a tips and tricks video. Or tips and tricks playlist, and in there you'll see the video where I do go through masking. So all I end up doing is, when you look at, especially with a compound curve, I'm going to zoom in here just a little bit so you guys can get a look at what I'm doing. So when you look at the window, I need my pointing stick. There's, especially with compound curves, you usually have 1, possibly 2 that edges of the window that is going to stay more or less straight. This curve here will not be a straight line. So if you try to mask with the straight line, it's going to curl and curve. This one is much closer to a straight line. Same with this window. You've got your top and your right are probably your 2 straightest lines you can work with. So what you want to do is start by laying the tape against really the straightest line you can find on the perspex. Takes just a little bit of, there we go. I also have, if I can find it, I picked up this, it's like a little, I don't even know what you want to call it. It's like a little metal ball on a tip. Use it to press down the tape. So you want to go along, really press it down. Make sure you are transferring through the edges of the window so it's really easy to see. And then the other thing I'll do, I'll widen you out a little bit here now. I tend to use just light. So I have the desk lamp here, and what I'll do is you angle it out, you hold the window up against the light, let the light shine through behind the tape. You can see the outlines of the clear parts, the perspex outlines. So from there, you just want to use your sharp knife. Don't press very hard. Just a little bit of pressure. I say that, now I can't see any of it here. Not a lot of pressure, just enough to cut through the surface of the tape. And I promise you it's boring right now, but when I'm done this, you'll get what I'm working on. There we go. So now when you pull this off, go slow just in case you've missed a section. Like you can see that top part didn't cut properly. Tape ripped. If you move too fast, that's just going to peel off the part you don't want to peel off. Apologies for the banging. The kids are running around upstairs. So there. Now that first window has been properly masked. Use burnishing tool. See? Came to me eventually. Use the burnishing tool, get that tape pushed down nice and tight, all your edges, and there's a window. And now, because I've pulled myself a larger piece of tape, I can reuse the same piece of tape again. And because you've burnished this down, it shouldn't pull the edges off at all. So go ahead and get the next window masked. As I said, I will be doing the 2 bottom rows at minimum here on the live stream, just so that when I start gluing the radome in place, it's going to give me the ability to do a little bit of sanding or whatnot and not have to worry about ruining the plastic. Now the other thing is holding this up against the light, especially on a kit like this, you've got some pretty soft details on the edge of where the windows are. So your knife isn't going to feel it. With some of the kits, the Perspex, the clear parts have a really pronounced edging, and your knife will glide along the seam. In this case, it won't. So you're relying on sight to see it a lot more than you will with feel. So you got to be careful when you're doing that. But there's 2. So there's 2 windows down, just like that. I find they're not horribly expensive, but the Edward pre-cut masks, which are, they usually literally use the same tape as this, they can get pricey. And I find really for being able to do this, you don't really need. So I'm just gonna get some dust in here, and I want to get a brush to clean some of that dust off. There we go. Being able to do it by hand, it just means you don't have to spend the money on those pre-cut tape masks. So worth giving this a shot if you haven't tried it yet. Now, unfortunately, there is a really, really gross, nasty seam right down the middle of this. And while I could sand it out, I don't trust myself enough to do clear Perspex sanding. I've done it once before, and it just completely ruined the kit. So I personally don't. However, for those out there who are good at it, have at it. It's a good skill to have, and I wish I had it. Also, again, for anyone who is jumping in here recently and missed the opening, I do have the chat open, so if you have any questions, feel free to throw it in chat. I do take a look over there as often as I can to see if anyone said anything. More than happy to answer any questions on this process. And if you haven't watched this from the beginning, feel free to jump out of this and go over and start watching from the beginning to see the process on this model to get to where I am now. Here's a perfect example where I didn't quite cut the tip and it is causing it to pull. So you just want to take your time, get in there and make sure. And you'll also notice I did slip. I scratched the clear part right there. Good news is I have no plans to enter this in any type of contest, so I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking for I'm happy with it. So I will live. Considering, as I just finished saying, there's a giant seam right down the middle of the nose. That little scratch I put on, not even gonna bother me. Not even gonna bother me. Some of you might not like it and would want to clean that up. And again, that's the good thing with modeling. It's your model. You can choose how far you want to go with it. I'm going to do this side first. It's always smart to kind of, as I've mentioned many times with models, order of operations is really important. Whoa, what am I doing? Order of operations is really important. So choosing which side to cut sometimes does make a difference because it gives you a starting and an end point versus just blind cutting. So, you know, take a look at the shape, see which lines are easier to see, and cut the easy ones first, and then work down to the harder ones. Sometimes getting the easy one trimmed and cut down to shape then allows the harder ones to work a little bit easier. Okay. It's not perfect, but believe it or not, that's actually the shape of the window. That one's horrible, actually. And the good news with that, you can just redo it. I'm actually going to redo one of these because I realize now that I cut one completely wavy. So I'm just going to take a piece of tape and I'm going to use it to remask an upper window line. And then I'm just going to cut the edges off. Not the first time I've messed up, won't be the last. There we go. Now the other thing you can do, you can get punches. I do have some smaller punches which I can use at times to make some of the smaller, circles and stuff that show up in these designs. For example, you've got this here, a little window. I'll probably end up trying to make a punch out of that instead of trying to mask a perfect circle on the kit and freehand cut that. But first thing I'll do, actually, you know what? I might freehand cut the outside and then I will punch the inside. And I'll probably do that here on camera so you all can see how that process works. So, I know, I apologize, as I mentioned, this isn't the most entertaining thing to watch, but I'll do my best to explain as I go. And again, I will more than happy answer any questions that might pop up in chat while I'm doing this. Keep everybody out there in YouTube land engaged while I cut this. Cut one. Cut two. And then cut down the front. And that should be that. Yep, perfect. Now the downside is you do end up with a bit of waste doing it this way, but I find for what it costs for a roll of tape is about what it costs for those pre-cut masks. So at the end of the day, really, you're winning. You're winning if you end up doing this yourself. If you can custom mask like this, or if you can do it yourself, I guess it's not custom masking, but if you can mask yourself, you will end up saving money in the long run. If you're looking for showroom quality models, might be worth spending the little bit of extra money on the pre-cut masks. To each their own. I even know of a few people who build their own files and will actually, and I've done it once with my F82, is I made my own vinyl masks on my Cricut. But I've talked to people who actually will generate their own files and will print their own masking for every kit, especially people who tend to build the same kit a lot. They end up saving money in the long run by just making their own and printing them on the Cricut. So if you have that ability, by all means, take advantage of it. Not a lot of people have that type of skill. But what you can do is basically what I'm doing is put the piece of masking tape on it and then take a pencil. And just like you were when you were a kid, if you run the pencil over the tape, it highlights, the outline. And then you can peel that off, lay it on a piece of tape or a piece of paper, scan it into your computer, and then trace and cut out those shapes, and then you end up with a perfectly matched Yeah, and now I just did that, and it's hiding the line I need to cut on. I think it's about there. Oh, let's hope that's right. But yeah, I've done it before with the F82. I made a set of masks by doing something like that. And I've done it in the past for decals. I've actually used masking tape to get the curvature of the fuselage. And I provided that to a vendor for custom decals, a custom wrap fuselage band. So you get the proper angle to match the fuselage curve so that it would look like a straight line. And I just use masking tape for that. So there's various ways that you can get that data and do it yourself. Oh, did that work? Oh, yeah. See, now I'm going to get my punch set out and I'll show you how a punch set can help you in a case like this. And honestly, my punch set, I'm like 90% sure I just bought it on, that's not a punch set. There's my punch set. I bought this on Amazon for next to nothing. It's not the greatest. It doesn't give you a lot of options. That's what, 1, 2, 3, 4. You get 9 different sizes, but you have your punch, and then you have the actual punches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the circles, and I'm going to try to find, just through trial and error, which ones line up with the center hole. I'm going to go a little smaller. I need to figure out a better storage system for this. That looks just about perfect. So I'll put all these back. So you can get these for, like I said, very, very little money. I got this on Amazon. I want to say it was less than $20 Canadian. I'm using that one right there. So it's not much at all. So make sure you find the punch you need, find the corresponding hole, just lay your tape over that opening. You put your guide back on the top. I also happen to have a little tiny jeweler's hammer, which comes in handy for something like this. Yeah, I'll just use the surface of this. So you want to put it on, don't push down at all, and just nice and firm, one solid thwack to get that punch. If you push slowly and you don't give it fast enough, you'll tear the edges of the tape. But if you do it fast enough and clean enough, you get a perfect little circle that you then have to carefully pry off the surface without distorting the tape. The problem with this type of tape, it will stretch and tear and deform if you're not careful. But that should fit on that circle just about perfectly. There. And I'll zoom in just so you can get a good look at how that looks. And now if this will focus properly, did I zoom in too close? Oh, come on. There it goes. See, look at that. Perfectly masked little circle. Now the outer edge might not be perfect, but that center, let me tell you, that center is as perfect as it can get. Now ideally what I could have done is I could have put the masking tape in there and punched out the outer diameter, laid that over the outer circle, and then cut the rest of the shape by hand. But I wasn't that smart when I did that. So that's how it's going to stay. Okay, so moving right along, we'll do one more window here, and then we'll mask off the center bomb aimer window, and then we can start gluing that radome in place, which is also going to be fun because that's going to change the complete look of the nose section for this kit. And it's a big step in getting this forward in my build. Also of note, there is this gun port on the side, and I'll have to check my references. I think it will get filled in as I'm going. I don't believe the machine gun gets mounted in that opening for the RAF Coastal Command version. I believe it is fared over, which means I'll just plug it with a piece of styrene and then paint it, and then the rest of it will stay. Same with the one up here. I believe there's an antenna that fits into that one. So I'll have to deal with that at some point in the future. So I'm going to continue. This front line is so faint, you almost can't see where it is. You're just kind of going off instinct. Same with this bottom one. There we go. I'm happy with that. Take it around the curve. Take the top one, bring it back to the edge of the gun fairing. And where's the gun fairing? Fairing is right there. Here's where I'm saying with order of operations. It's hard to see where the straight line ends. So if you mask the curve of the gun fairing, which is easy to find, then your straight line comes back to the gun fairing. You should end up with a cut that comes off nice and clean and doesn't have any pulls or tears. We'll find out when I come down this how close I got. Yeah. Oh, pulled a little bit of that bottom one off. We'll just burnish that back down. That corner is always going to be a bit of a pain just because it's a corner. But there we go. So there's the 4 edges at the bottom. I'll do that one center bomb aimers. And as I said, then we'll start gluing on the radome. Now, again, for anybody who's joining, and I noticed there's nobody in the chat, so I'm going to assume either everyone who's here knows what I'm doing or is too shy to talk. So for those who don't know what's going on, this is my 1/48 scale. Where's the top of that? Right there. Revell of Germany B-24D that I'm building up in Coastal Command colors. So it will have the British markings and the gray-green on the top, or I guess it's gray-gray. Middle, extra dark sea gray and slate gray on the top and a white bottom. And it's got the radar. This is really not easy. It's got the radar mounted on the nose, which is that thing I have to glue on next. I think I screwed that up a little bit. We'll find out here in a second how close I got. That one is hard to do. I don't know. I'm gonna go with it. I can always correct it afterwards if I have to. Need to fix this upper ledge here. It's a little crooked. There, a bit better. Okay, so I'm gonna go with that. That looks good. I just have this top part to do still, which I'll do later, possibly off camera, depending on time, which we are looking about halfway. So I think this is gonna work out pretty much exactly as I want. So let's glue the radar on. So the radar is this, and it's the resin radar that was provided in the Belcher Bits ASW kit. Now I have had to do a little bit of work on it. It's a little hard to see on camera. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can kind of get a feel for what's going on. So everywhere you see green, I've done some work on this previously, and I did this off camera. So there's actually 2 layers of white styrene that I've glued on here. I've sanded down to fit, and I've just painted it green because you see it inside. You might be able to get a good look from the back side here where the styrene is. And that's because I noticed when I went to fit it to the nose after I glued on the clear perspex, it didn't want to fit properly. And there was 2 ways it didn't want to fit. In one, I believe I sanded the perspex back a little too much, so it left a gap. But also, if I put it properly here, where the radome meets the opening of the nose wheel, it sits way too far out the nose, and no amount of sanding would properly fix that. So I realized I had to tuck this back a little bit, and in that process I had to shim it in order to get it to meet the perspex properly. And then what I'll have to do after the fact is clean up the back where it meets the nose wheel well. That's just going to be resanded and recontoured at a later date. But that's how it's going to look, and it actually looks really, really good. So there's a couple of things I need to do right now to get this prepped. So first of all, you need to be aware that super gluing anything close to clear perspex can fog the perspex to the point that it's unusable. It does get fixed if you future it. I've had hit or miss abilities with future. Sometimes it goes on nice and clear parts look good. Other times it goes on, the clear parts look horrible. As well, sometimes you put the future and you super glue and it works, and sometimes you do it and it still fogs. So I'm going to do two different things here. One, I just have regular old Elmer's school white PVA glue. Need a bit more than that. So I'm going to use a mix of that as well as super glue to get this to mount. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of super glue at the rear, and I'm just going to go for it. I'm not going to do any type of measuring. I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to put a little bit of super glue along the back edge. I'm going to put a pretty hefty amount. So that's going to get a nice strong bond to the rear fuselage. I need to get my stand out because this is going to save me when I get into this. And I should have prepped this, as I said. I should have prepped this before I got this far into it. So I'm going to put a bit of super glue on it. Now I'm going to get one of my junk brushes that I use for glue. And what I'm going to do is use the clear PVA around the front. That will then allow it to join with the plastic, not fog the clear plastic at all, and this PVA will actually dry clear. And I've used this before on other builds around canopies, specifically because it dries clear and you're able to get in there and fill gaps and stuff around canopies, and that doesn't involve a lot of sanding and potential ruining of the clear perspex. So I'm going to do that. So let's get this in here. I'm going to try my best to drop it in on one shot. Oh, that's not what I wanted to happen. Oh. Welcome to an average day at my model desk. Okay. Not going anywhere as well as I hoped it would. And now I'm getting my fingers stuck to the super glue, which means if I touch that clear perspex, it is going to completely ruin it. So I'm just gonna have to, actually I think that last drop might have been it. I think that's the sweet spot. The PVA has a little bit of flex in it once it dries. It has some play. I think that's it. I'm going to leave that like that. I'm not going to touch it. I'm just going to place this on the stand up here, and it's gonna live right there so you can see it and probably watch me as I knock it down, and I'm not even gonna look at it. I'm just gonna, yeah, it's there, it's gonna do its thing. Did my camera completely just... Apologies, people. I think I might have frozen the camera. Okay, well, I'm going to try to fix that. Thank you, random user. I just caught your message and realized that the image was completely frozen. So I don't know what is going on. At least the audio still works. I've been sitting here talking away. I'm going to try cycling the camera and see what happens. those who are just joining, my image has completely frozen, and this is the first time I've ever dealt with this problem. Nothing, eh? Yeah, see? Now I'm getting... I might have to end this. Oh, I think it's back. Oh, I fixed it. Look at that. Apologies, folks, for that interruption. That was not intended. So, what you completely missed with the rambling while the video was dead by the looks of the frozen image, I got it glued on, and I'm sure you heard me, but I dropped it about 4 times. So, I'll pull this quickly out again so you can see. I have the radome glued on. I'm not going to tilt it because it will fall over. The super glue should be doing its job here, and it is still a little loose, so I'm going to have to really play with this after the fact. Yeah, I'm going to have to get in here after and put some super glue down inside the opening to make sure that it properly seats and locks in place and dries and glues the way I want. But as long as I can get it tacked into place, then I can go back and fix it after. So that's going to sit like that. It's going to dry. No one's going to look at it. Please don't look at it. If you look at it, it's going to fall. So we're going to move on to the wings, and I'm going to work on the nacelles. Do a little bit of puttying around that. This is just your standard white Tamiya putty, which I have personally prefer over anything else that I have tried. And I just use toothpicks. Just straight old Amazon toothpicks that are junk and you wouldn't want to jam in your mouth at all, but they're perfect for this. And then the good thing is you get 2. You get the small side and the big side, so you can choose what you want based off of the job. So I'm just going to grab a little bit and I'm going to apply it along the sides of these nacelles where the seams are. You can apply it pretty liberally and it will sand off really, really nicely after. I'm not going to go around the front because that would have been a legitimate panel line on the original aircraft, and I can fill the worst of it with Mr. Surfacer. That will hide the worst of the depth, but still leave a slight indentation on the surface that looks like a panel line. So you can kind of cheat the system with a bit of Mr. Surfacer. So I'm going to leave that. I'm just going to focus on the sides here. And the good news is using this, you do have a nice straight edge, so you can kind of, like a grater, pull it across and fill into the depth that you want to fill it into. Which is nice. This side is the one that looks horrible. So I'm really going to have to get it in there. Add the putty will shrink a little bit. So like I said, really get in there. If you have a little bit of extra on the surface, it'll all sand down. Just be careful around any raised panel lines that you want to save, because you're going to sand off the raised panel lines. With an engraved panel line kit, it's not as important because you can just go back and clean up the panel lines after the fact. So I'm going to go ahead on this side as well. I'm just going to get the putty on. Obviously, we're not going to do any sanding today. This is going to take quite a bit of time to dry and be prepared for sanding. But, you know, it's a good look at how this process goes. We'll get in there and fill this seam. This side isn't as bad. Even if it doesn't look bad, put a little bit of putty on it. Again, if you sand it all off and didn't end up needing any, whatever. You've wasted a couple of cents in product. But you don't want to find out after the fact you put all this effort into puttying and the elbow grease into sanding and everything else. Put another coat of primer on just to find out there's that one little bit that you wished you had puttied in the first place. I just recently had that with, oh man, that side's almost perfect. With one of my the 1/144th-8 that I'm working on. Got all this fuselage all puttied and all the seams sanded. It looked really good. I was all happy. And then I hit it with primer, and there was this big, nasty seam all the way down the top of the forward fuselage, because I had just assumed that it was great. But once you hit primer, it all showed. So, yeah, so that's about it. All the other leading edge, trailing edge, everything looks perfect. I'm not going to worry about that. Actually, no, I'll hit that with Mr. Surfacer. Same with this one, doesn't have a gap at all. So yeah, we'll leave the wings like that. And I'm going to now jump back to the fuselage, and I'm going to do a little bit more glue at this point, because I want to make sure that that is nice and solid. Because if I'm going to walk away from this thing for, 12 hours, I want to make sure when I come back that it's not just going to fall off the minute I look at it. So, I'm just going to try this. This is going to fall off. I'm going to get in here with a little bit of glue. Like that. I'll do the same thing on the other side. Okay, that's all I'm going to do. This will take a good sanding after the fact. I'm not centered in the opening, which I think is half my problem. It's shifted to one side. Oh, this is exactly what I didn't want to be fighting with right now. I don't think, actually, maybe I can. Can I? Oh, you know what? I might have just enough play with this to get this clamped. No. That was a dumb idea. Dumb idea. Okay, well, I'm just going to leave that. As I said, don't look at it. Nothing goes wrong. I'm going to leave it as it is. And we're going to hope that the super glue does its job, locks it in place, and I can then clean up after the fact with white glue and Mr. Surfacer and a bit of putty and blend everything. I popped the seam on this side, so I need to get a little bit of liquid glue back in there and make sure that that doesn't pop off on me. Okay. So yeah, I'm not going to even look at that. We'll just leave it tomorrow or whenever I come back to this. I will clean that up with some white glue and some Mr. Surfacer, and we'll blend that as best as we can back into the fuselage. This is going to take quite a bit of work on this side, but like I said, white glue, putty, Mr. Surfacer, whatever we need to do, that should blend quite nicely. But it's nice when you see it. It's starting to, the nose, it's starting to get that look. And this is kind of where I like when these kits start to come together. You start to see the shape and you start to get excited. That's usually my problem. I get excited. I want to move forward. I want to see it. Thanks to their AGB edits. Yeah, really nice. I'm very happy with how this thing is looking right now. But like I said, I tend to cut the corners and I rush and I want to see it, and then I really screw something up. So I think one of the greatest modeling skills I could learn was to just put the model away and let it be. Let it live. Let it do its thing. Yeah. How are we doing for time? We are at 8:45. We've got 15 minutes. So you know what we'll do? The two things we're going to do. One, because there's not much else I can do on the fuselage at this point, because if I touch it or look at it, it's going to break. And the wings now have drying putty. So we'll pull out the tail, the empennage, and we'll take a quick look at that. And yeah, exactly. Do it the same all the time. That's exactly what happens. And I still do it. Been doing this for 30 odd years, and I still end up just jumping into it sometimes and making mistakes and making the model 10 times worse than it needs to be. I'm going to get my bigger sanding stick. Where's my big sanding stick? There we go. I'm just going to clean the edges on this up a little bit. Just get that little bit of flash off. I'm not going to go crazy. This needs a good coat of primer to really get a feel for where it needs to be. I just want to knock the worst of it off now. I think... No, I didn't do this side. I thought I did this side. Yeah, so I'm just going to do this quickly. I'm not going to do this for too long. I want to pull out the Wild Sow kit that I have, the aftermarket, the rocket pods, or the rocket wings that mount to the forward fuselage. I want to pull those out and start prepping, because I'd like to get that done, ready to be installed. I'm probably going to try to do a pin system, set it up with pins to mount it properly to the fuselage so it's not just a butt joint. So I'm going to get that prepped so I can start working on that offline. So the next time I come back for the live stream, here I'll be gluing those on, which is really going to make that nose section a fragile mess. But it is what it is. So yeah, that, I think... That's pretty much that. I think that I still have to figure out order of operations for this tail. I think I might glue it together as is, get it square, get it glued, get these seams all cleaned up and locked on before I glue this onto the fuselage. I also have to double check. I think I need the turret in place before I can do that. But I got to double check with the instructions in the aftermarket, because I do have an aftermarket tail that fits into there. Yeah, I gotta figure that out. See, this is... Shouldn't be doing this, but I want to see what it looks like. Yeah, there we go. You can start to see the tail and the shape of this thing coming together. If I hadn't just glued that nose radar on, I would have put it all together to get a good look, but no, not anymore. So maybe next video. So the wild... Oh, see? See? Okay, so the Wild Sow resin set that I got, which I talked about a few times, came... Now, it's very much the epitome of a garage kit. So take this, you know, everything you see with a grain of salt. So I have mounting points that mount to the side of the fuselage that these then glue to. This one's already partially prepped. So that's kind of mounted somewhere up here on the side of the fuselage, down in here somewhere. I'm gonna have to play with that a little bit. And then, so you've got the wings, the mounting points to the fuselage that they mount to. You've got 4 struts that need a lot of cleanup, but these are the struts that kind of mount on here and lock this into the fuselage. And then you've got rockets, which are mounted in like halves. So you're supposed to glue them, you know, clean them up and glue the 2 halves together to complete a final rocket. I might go through my spares box and see if I have some spares. These are just the standard British rockets. Am I missing one? Uh-oh. Well, that ain't good. Looks like I could potentially be Yeah, I might actually be, unless I... Oh, no. See? That's when I dropped it. There we go. So you get 8, which gives you 2 per each, 16 full halves, which is 8 full rockets. So this I'm not going to worry about too much because I'm probably going to try to track down some spares bin stuff to do that with, or even aftermarket. We'll see. And then this is the tail turret, which is the British style 4-gun tail turret that goes in place of the American style turret on these coastal commands. So this, as you can see, has a lot of cleanup that needs to be done. And then on that aftermarket vacuum form canopy thing I showed you, there is the tail turret. All that mounts together and the guns come out. So that's going to be cleaned up. That's actually, believe it or not, still painted in the night scheme, the all over black, and was just dropped into the back of the B-24. I believe it was the tail turret off of a Halifax, if memory does serve me correct. So what I need to start doing is prepping these. So first things first, I'm not going to do a ton of work on this, just because we are getting close. And for all of those who did join on recently, I will be wrapping this up in about 10 minutes, unfortunately. I try to stick this to about an hour. If you are enjoying what you're watching, keep an eye on my Facebook page. I do announce the schedule for when I plan to do these ahead of time. I suspect the next one will be in 2 or 3 weeks. I'm going to try to keep the schedule going a little bit tighter than I have been. So I'm going to try to cut this off the pour block, which we'll see how this goes because it's pretty messy. As I said, this is a real garage kit and it's a mess. A lot of bubbles. The mold wasn't the best of shape. The resin is very, I don't want to say soft, but it's oily. It's grabby. It's not hard. You can almost hear, well, it broke off pretty quick. You can hear the squeaking of this as it's working. It's grabbing the saw and holding it instead of cleanly cutting, which most harder resins do. So we'll see at the end of the day how well this looks. I don't know how well. You know what? I'm just going to zoom in and show this to you. If you can get a good look at how chunky that is. That's the clean edge. This is what was down inside the mold. This was the top pour edge. And it's, she's a bit rough. Also the surface, I don't know if I can capture that on the camera. You might see it there in the shadows. There's a lot of bubbles. There, you can see it there. A lot of like little bubbles and indentations that are not supposed to be there. So there's gonna be a lot of prep work on these things. Which kind of why I said if I can start the prep work here online, then when I do these offline for the next video, it won't look so bad. It won't be such a jarring experience to all of a sudden see the next steps. But this is going to take some work. I'm not looking forward to doing this, but it gotta get done. Yeah, I'm not going to go too much here. Oh, man. It's like a combination of like squeaky but brittle. So I have no idea how this is going to sand. Now I'm going to give you the same caveat that I've told a lot of people when I work with resin, and please do as I say, don't as I do. If you're going to work with resin, proper precautions. Resin dust is carcinogenic. So if you're going to do lots of work with resin, it's best to have masks, exhaust fans, all that fun stuff. I don't. I also tend to make some pretty poor life choices at times. So, you know, take that for what it's worth. But yeah, I'm just going to clean up as much as I can here. Even just the surface of this. It does sand nicely, I have to say. This is my first time working with Wild Style Resin. I've never used any of his products before. So I'm kind of learning on the fly here how this works. It's definitely softer, as I mentioned. But it does sand quite nicely, I have to say. I wasn't too sure what to expect. So that is that. And then this is the... Clean that bubble up. this is that mounting point that goes on the fuselage. Like the fairing. I'm just cleaning this up a little bit more. And yeah, so that would mount to that. Oh, I think I've got the upside down one. I think this is this side. Yeah, that side's that side. So they are handed. So I do have to be careful when I'm doing this. Although they're completely different sizes, I think. Yes, one is very much shorter than the other, which is frustrating. They are completely different sizes. Let's hope the wings are completely different sizes. That might solve my problem. I think these are going to take quite a bit of effort to clean up and make look nice, but it's going to be cool having that mounted off the side. Actually, I think it's the other way around, but yeah. Yes, I know, thank you. I do need to mask up. I agree. I should be. Granted, I don't do resin a lot, and I don't tend to do too much in terms of like dremeling or like throwing. And I do have my little, there we go, my little desk vacuum that I use to clean up. So I do try to limit this. I don't let the kids down here when I'm doing this. I clean everything up. And if I am going to do anything crazy, I tend to take it outside. So let's see. How are we for time? Just a few more minutes. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this next side off. Get it off the pour stub. That one cut a lot nicer than the first one did. So it might just be that particular piece is a little different. The rest of them seem to be nice. Get this mating surface sanded down a little bit. And then, yeah, that looks good. So that is the side that's supposed to fit on this, and I'm sure, you know what? No, they are absolutely. The wings are not the same length. That is hilarious. They are two different lengths because that one fits. No, the wings are the same size. It's these that are different. Yeah, I'm not looking forward to this. Anyways. That mounts nicely to that. That is the top surface there. So that would mount like that. And that is that side, which means this side is this side. So this will go somewhere up in here, but I'll have to play with angles and stuff to make sure that it's mounted properly. And I'll look at the book. I have the references in the book here and how it's supposed to look, but it goes up here and then gets mounted to that, and then I'll have to add the struts, clean up all the seams, and then finish masking this off. I got to get the canopy masked and glued off. There's still a lot of work to go on this thing. I really should not have put off working on this for so long. I delayed and didn't do these live streams as much as I should have. And it's kind of come back to bite me in the rear end at this point, where I'm not really as far ahead as I wished I was. So much more work to go on this thing. But that being said, I did for the most part hit all of the benchmarks that I did want to hit on this video, this particular live stream. So for the next little while, I think I'm going to put the other kits to the side, and I'm going to really focus on this. I started this when I started the last 4 kits, which was, I don't even remember. I did the F14, the A6. What did I do? F14, A6, the B-24, and the CF5. I started those all at the same time. The F14, the A6, and the CF5 are completed and on the shelf, and I've already got my second round of kits, which is this Albatross D5 and a Fokker DR1, already to the primer stage, pretty much ready for paint. Plus, I've built a 1144-8 for a commission for a customer, and this has already gotten to the point of primer, and this is still at this stage. So this is way behind where I should be. But part of that is I've been putting off these live streams. So my plan for offline, as I said, I'm going to put those other ones away. I want to focus pretty heavily on this. What I'd like to have done before I come back for the next live stream, I'd like to have those engine nacelles sanded, have the wings primed again, and be 100% ready for paint with the wings. I'm going to get this glued together, cleaned up, primed, and ready for paint. And then I'm going to focus on the fuselage. I'd like to get everything masked, the radome blended properly, mounted, have all the seams filled, reshape the rear half of this, get that all fitting, cleaned up nicely, have the whole thing masked, canopy glued on and masked as well. And I'll have all of these parts prepped. And that way, the next live stream will focus pretty heavily on just getting these figured out. How I'm going to mount these properly. As I said, I'll probably end up doing pins. I think that's going to be the plan. I'm going to mount these to the fuselage, which I might even do off stream. I might get these bases glued on, and that will allow me to get them cleaned up and blended at the same time I do the radome, and then have this stuff ready to go, and then I can focus on drilling holes and pinning and getting everything lined up properly and mounted the way it needs to be mounted. So I think that's the plan. So yeah, it's 9 o'clock. I'm gonna wrap this up. I'm gonna go upstairs, make sure the kids are in bed, give them a hug, clean all this up, and get ready to keep working on other days. So thank you all for watching. I appreciate all of you guys who have been stayed with me, watched it, all that fun stuff. For everyone who's commenting, again, thank you. Appreciate the connection there. It's nice to have that feedback and talk to people and know that people are out there are paying attention and watching. So that's always appreciated. And if you haven't watched anything else on the channel, please jump around, see what I have. I got a lot of cool content on the channel, a lot of different aviation topics that you might catch on and enjoy. And I got more stuff coming out. I got a new video actually coming out tomorrow, and then another one every Saturday for the rest of this month. So thank you for watching. I'm going to wrap it up here. We'll see you all next time.